I'm Brandon, 33 years old, and 3 months ago, my grandfather left me his lakeside cabin in his will. That place was our special sanctuary. He taught me to fish there to appreciate the quiet moments in nature. The inheritance surprised everyone, especially my sister Amanda. My parents seemed supportive at first, but something felt off. Last Thursday, I drove up for a peaceful weekend, only to discover someone had a key I never gave them. What I found inside shattered my trust in my family. If you're curious about what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button, and subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal and boundaries. My grandfather Harold was more than just a relative to me. From the time I was 7 years old, he took me under his wing and showed me a world beyond video games and television. Every summer we'd spend weekends at his cabin by Lake Meridian. The place wasn't fancy, just a 2-bedroom wooden structure with a small dock. But to me, it was magical. The value of a place isn't in its size or cost, Brandon he'd tell me while teaching me to cast a fishing line from the dock. It's in the memories you make there. We made plenty of memories. He taught me how to identify different bird calls, how to build a proper campfire, and even basic carpentry skills that I use to this day in my construction business. The hours we spent repairing the dock, sanding rough edges on the porch railings, and replacing loose shingles gave me an appreciation for working with my hands that eventually became my career. My sister Amanda was different. 3 years younger than me, she never connected with the cabin or with our grandfather in the same way. While I was helping Grandpa fix the leaky roof, she'd be inside complaining about the spotty cell service or the lack of shopping options in the small nearby town. When invited fishing, she'd wrinkle her nose and say something like, "Why would I want to touch slimy fish when I could be at the mall?" Our parents Susan and Richard visited occasionally, but were always too busy with their real estate business to spend much time there. Dad would comment on property values and potential renovations that could really make this place sell, missing the point entirely. Mom would clean obsessively as if the natural accumulation of dust somehow offended her urban sensibilities. Grandpa never judged any of them. "People connect with places differently," he'd say with a shrug. "This cabin speaks to you and me. That's enough." When he passed away 3 months ago at 87, it hit me hard. The funeral was difficult, but the will reading a week later brought another kind of surprise. My grandfather's lawyer, a serious woman named Patricia, read through the standard distributions of financial assets, then paused, before announcing, "And, to my grandson Brandon, who understood the true value of simple things, I leave my cabin on Lake Meridian and all its contents, with the hope he will continue to find peace there as I did." The room went silent. I felt a mix of honor and sadness wash over me. My parents exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Amanda's face, however, showed clear shock that quickly transformed into anger. "That makes no sense," she said immediately. "Family property should stay available to all family." Patricia responded calmly. "Your grandfather was very clear about his wishes, Amanda. The cabin goes solely to Brandon." Later, as we stood in the parking lot of the lawyer's office, my father clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Well, I guess Harold had his reasons," he said, but his smile seemed forced. My mother added, "We're just surprised, that's all. We always assumed the cabin would be for everyone." Amanda didn't even try to hide her feelings. "This is so unfair. I wanted to use that place for weekend getaways with friends. You don't even have time for it with your business." That wasn't true. I'd already been planning how I could restructure my work schedule to spend more time at the cabin. I had dreams of continuing the renovations Grandpa and I had discussed, updating the bathroom, expanding the deck, adding solar panels to reduce the electricity costs. "I'm not selling it if that's what you're worried about," I told them. "Grandpa wanted me to have it, and I'm going to honor that by taking care of it." 2 weeks after the will reading, my parents invited me over for dinner without Amanda. Over Mom's pot roast, they brought up the topic I suspected was coming. We were thinking, my father began cautiously, that perhaps we could work out some kind of sharing arrangement for the cabin. My mother quickly added, "Not that we're questioning your ownership, of course, but it would be nice if the whole family could still enjoy it sometimes." I took a sip of water, choosing my words carefully. I'm not opposed to family visiting, but I'd appreciate advance notice, and I'd like to be there when people use it. It's a special place, and I want to make sure it's respected. They exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. My father nodded. That sounds reasonable. We just don't want Amanda to feel completely cut off from a place that holds family memories. I understand, I replied, though I wondered how many memories Amanda actually valued from the cabin she'd spent most visits complaining about. As I left that night, I felt we'd reached an understanding. The cabin was mine, but I would be generous with family access when appropriate. Looking back, I should have noticed the way my parents nodded too quickly, the way they changed the subject too smoothly, but I trusted them. That was my first mistake. After settling the inheritance paperwork and handling the property tax transfer, I was eager to spend some quality time at the cabin. My construction business had just completed a major renovation project, which meant I could take a long weekend without worrying about work calls. I planned to arrive Thursday evening and stay until Monday morning. 4 days of peaceful solitude to honor my grandfather's memory and begin planning the improvements I wanted to make. The drive up to Lake Meridian always calmed me. As the urban sprawl gave way to increasingly dense forests and the occasional glimpse of water through the trees, I could feel the tension leaving my shoulders. 2 hours from the city, the narrow road that led to the cabin was familiar and welcoming. The gravel crunched under my truck tires as I made the final turn. That's when I saw it. A silver Honda Civic I didn't recognize, parked in the gravel driveway beside the cabin. My first thought was that someone had made a wrong turn, perhaps hikers, using the nearby trails who needed directions. But as I pulled up behind the car, I noticed several empty beer bottles on the small front porch. A knot formed in my stomach as I cut the engine. Music was playing inside. Not loud enough to be a major disturbance, but definitely indicating occupancy. I grabbed my duffel bag from the passenger seat and approached the cabin door, finding it unlocked. The scene inside stopped me cold. 6 people were sprawled across the living room, my sister Amanda and her boyfriend Tyler on the couch, and 4 people I'd never met occupying the armchairs and floor space. The coffee table was littered with pizza boxes, more beer bottles, and bags of chips. Someone had moved the furniture around to create what they probably thought was a more social arrangement, but which destroyed the careful placement my grandfather had preferred for optimal viewing of both the fireplace and the lake through the picture window. Brandon, Amanda said, not sounding particularly surprised or embarrassed. What are you doing here? I stood in the doorway, struggling to process what I was seeing. This is my cabin. The question is, what are you doing here, and who are these people? Tyler, a guy I'd met only twice, and hadn't particularly liked either time, raised his beer bottle in a mock salute. Just having a little getaway, man. No big deal. One of the strangers, a woman with pink-streaked hair, looked uncomfortable and nudged the guy sitting next to her. The other couple continued chatting, as if I hadn't walked in. How did you get in here? I asked Amanda, directly dropping my bag on the floor. She reached into her pocket and dangled a key. Mom and Dad gave me a copy. They said it's fine for me to use the place when I want to, family property and all that. The casual way she said it, as if my inheritance meant nothing, as if my boundaries deserved no respect, sent a surge of anger through me that I struggled to control. That's not what we agreed on, I said, keeping my voice level. I told them family could visit with advance notice and when I'm here. Amanda rolled her eyes. Don't be so uptight, Brandon. Grandpa would have wanted us to enjoy this place. It's not like you're using it all the time. That's not the point, I replied, my anger growing. This is my property. You can't just show up with people I don't know and throw a party. The pink-haired woman stood up. Maybe we should go, Amanda. We didn't know this was a problem. At least someone had some sense of boundaries. The others slowly began to recognize the tension, setting down their drinks and gathering their belongings. Tyler, however, wasn't so tactful. Dude, you need to chill. It's just a dusty old cabin. We're not hurting anything. As he said this, I noticed a fresh stain on the rug. A rug my grandfather had brought back from a trip to New Mexico and treasured for its craftsmanship. I also spotted grandfather's collection of hand-tied fishing flies normally kept in a special display case scattered across the side table as if they were mere decorations. I want everyone out, I said firmly. Now. The 4 friends mumbled awkward goodbyes and filed out the door. Amanda made a show of slowly gathering her things, while Tyler deliberately took his time finishing his beer. You know, Amanda said as she finally headed for the door, this selfish behavior is exactly why no one was surprised Grandpa left you this place, birds of a feather and all that. The comment stung more than I wanted to admit. What's that supposed to mean? You two were always in your own little world here, excluding everyone else. Now you're continuing the tradition. She grabbed her purse. Come on, Tyler. My brother obviously needs his precious alone time with his inheritance. Tyler smirked as he followed her out. Later, man. Nice place you got. Real generous of you to share. The door slammed behind them, leaving me alone in the disarray of their impromptu party. I stood there for several minutes, shock giving way to a deeper sense of violation. This wasn't just about unauthorized use of the cabin. This was about my family completely disregarding my boundaries and my grandfather's wishes. I slowly walked through each room, cataloging the mess. Empty bags of chips ground into the couch cushions. Wet rings from beer bottles marking the wooden side tables. Muddy footprints tracked across the floor. In the kitchen, unwashed dishes filled the sink, and something sticky had spilled down the front of the refrigerator. But it was the bedroom that really drove home the invasion. Amanda and Tyler had clearly been sleeping in my grandfather's bed. Their suitcases were open on the floor clothes spilling out. The handmade quilt that had been in our family for generations was bunched at the foot of the bed, a dark stain visible on one corner. I sat down on the edge of the bed, a place where I'd listened to my grandfather tell stories of his youth, where he'd comforted me after my first heartbreak, where he'd lain during his final visit when climbing to the loft. Bedroom had become too difficult for him. Now it felt contaminated by people who had no respect for what this place meant. My hands were shaking with anger, but beneath that was a deeper hurt. My own parents had given Amanda a key without my knowledge or permission. They had explicitly undermined the boundaries I'd set. And Amanda, rather than feeling any remorse for the intrusion, had acted entitled to use my inheritance however she pleased. As the evening grew darker outside the windows, I began the process of cleaning up, feeling more alone than I had since my grandfather's funeral. The betrayal cut deep, and I knew that when morning came, I would have difficult decisions to make about how to handle this breach of trust. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the cabin windows, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. I'd slept poorly, my mind churning with anger and disappointment. After a quick cup of coffee, I began a systematic assessment of the damage my sister and her friends had left behind. In the living room, beyond the obvious mess of food wrappers and drink stains, I discovered that one of the fishing rods my grandfather had handcrafted was broken, its tip snapped off, and lying beneath the couch. He'd spent weeks working on that particular rod, carefully wrapping the guide eyes with thread and applying multiple coats of varnish. This one's special, he'd told me. Balanced just right for rainbow trout. Now it was ruined. The hand-woven quilt I'd noticed the night before was worse than I initially thought. What looked like red wine had soaked through one corner, staining the intricate pattern my great-grandmother had designed. I remembered my grandfather telling me how his mother had worked on it during long Minnesota winters, each square representing a family story. History you can wrap yourself in, he'd called it. In the kitchen, someone had left water running in the sink, causing it to overflow slightly and warp a section of the wooden counter. The refrigerator contained half-eaten containers of takeout growing mold, suggesting this wasn't Amanda's first unauthorized visit. The hardwood floors, which my grandfather and I had refinished together 5 summers ago, bore scratch marks from furniture being dragged across the surface. We'd spent an entire week on our hands and knees, sanding, staining, and sealing those floors. Now they would need to be repaired again. Most concerning were the missing items. My grandfather's vintage brass compass, a gift from his father when he returned from World War II, was gone from its place on the mantel. Several small silver picture frames containing old family photos had disappeared from the bookshelf. Whether they were broken, misplaced, or taken deliberately, I couldn't tell. By mid-morning, my initial shock had hardened into resolve. I pulled out my phone and called my parents, putting the call on speaker as I continued to clean. My mother answered on the 4th ring. "Brandon, honey, how are you? Are you at the cabin?" "Yes, I'm at the cabin," I replied, not bothering to hide the tension in my voice. "I arrived yesterday to find Amanda Tyler and 4 strangers having a party here. Care to explain how she got a key?" A pause. "Oh, that. Well, we thought it would be good for Amanda to have access too. It's a family place after all. No, Mom, it's not a family place. Grandpa left it to me specifically. We discussed this. You agreed family could visit with advance notice when I'm here. Don't be so dramatic, Brandon, she said dismissively. It's just stuff. Amanda needed somewhere to relax with her friends. What's the harm? The casual way she dismissed the violation sent my blood pressure rising. The harm? They broke Grandpa's custom fishing rod. They stained grate, Grandma's quilt. They scratched the floors we refinished together. And items are missing. Missing? My father's voice suddenly joined the call. What do you mean missing? Grandpa's compass is gone. So are some of the silver frames. And who knows what else I haven't discovered yet. I'm sure they're just misplaced, my father said quickly. Amanda wouldn't steal anything. Whether she took them or her friends did doesn't change the fact that you gave her a key without my permission, I countered. How did you even get a duplicate made? Another telling pause. We had a spare key from when we used to watch the place for your grandfather, my mother finally admitted. We thought it would be good to give it to Amanda so she could enjoy the cabin too. You're overreacting, son, my father added. Family shares. That's what your grandfather would have wanted. His invocation of my grandfather's wishes pushed me over the edge. Don't tell me what Grandpa would have wanted. He left this cabin to me, not to all of us. He knew exactly what he was doing. Be more generous, Brandon, my mother scolded. This isn't like you. But it was exactly like me to protect what mattered, to honor commitments and respect boundaries. My grandfather had understood that about me, even if my parents didn't. I'm changing the locks today, I told them firmly. If anyone wants to visit the cabin in the future, they can call me directly and ask. No more unauthorized access. You're being childish, my father snapped. This isn't just about you. Actually, legally, it is just about me. This is my property, and I'm setting clear boundaries now. I'll talk to you later. I ended the call before they could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline. Part of me couldn't believe I'd stood up to them so directly, but a stronger part knew it was long overdue. Within minutes, my phone began buzzing with text messages from Amanda. What the hell? Brandon, Mom says, you're changing the locks. I went to the cabin, and my key doesn't work. Real mature. You can't just cut family off from a place that belongs to all of us. I ignored the messages and searched online for locksmiths in the area. Fortunately, a company in the nearby town could send someone out that afternoon. While waiting, I continued cleaning my mind, processing the depth of the betrayal I felt. My parents had deliberately undermined my ownership rights. They'd presented one position to my face, agreeing to my boundaries, while secretly enabling Amanda to ignore those same boundaries. It wasn't just about the cabin anymore. It was about respect and honesty within my family. The locksmith, an older man named Ray, arrived around 2 o'clock. As he worked on replacing the locks, he made casual conversation. Nice place you got here. Been in the family long. My grandfather built it in the 70s, I replied. He left it to me when he passed a few months ago. Ray nodded sagely. That's how family disputes start inheritance. Seen it plenty of times in my line of work. Is it that obvious? I asked. Changing locks on a cabin in the middle of nowhere usually means someone's got access you don't want them to have. He tested the new front door lock. But good for you setting boundaries. Lot of folks let family walk all over them just to keep the peace. His validation strengthened my resolve. By late afternoon, I had new keys in hand and a security system scheduled for installation the following week. It felt like a necessary fortress against my own family, a sad reality I was only beginning to accept. The next morning, I woke to my phone vibrating continuously. 27 text messages, 15 missed calls, and numerous voicemails had accumulated overnight. My family had mobilized. The group chat my parents had started included not just them and Amanda, but also my aunt, Helen, Uncle James, and several cousins. My mother had framed the situation as Brandon locking family out of the cabin after Grandpa specifically wanted everyone to enjoy it. A complete reversal of the truth. Uncle James, my grandfather's younger brother, had written, Brandon, I'm disappointed. You're spitting on your grandfather's memory by being so selfish with the cabin. Harold would never have approved of this behavior. Aunt Helen, always dramatic, added, "Your grandfather would be ashamed to see you acting this way. Family property is meant to be shared." The narrative they'd constructed bore no resemblance to reality. In their version, I was the villain hoarding a family resource out of spite or greed. The fact that the cabin was legally mine, left specifically to me by my grandfather, seemed irrelevant to them. My phone rang again. Amanda calling for what the log showed was the 8th time. I declined the call and opened her texts. "Everyone thinks you're being ridiculous. Mom is really upset, thanks a lot. Tyler says, you're just jealous because I have friends who want to hang out at the lake and you don't." That last one stung, not because it was true, but because it revealed how little my sister understood me. This wasn't about social status or petty jealousy. It was about respecting my grandfather's wishes and my property rights. The family pressure continued mounting throughout the day. My cousin Patrick, who I'd always been close with, called to talk some sense into me. "Look, I get that technically the cabin is yours," he said, the first person to actually acknowledge this fact. "But you're creating a huge rift in the family over this. Is it really worth it?" "It's not about the cabin anymore, Patrick," I tried to explain. "It's about the complete disregard for boundaries. They made a duplicate key without telling me. Amanda brought strangers here who damaged irreplaceable things." "Yeah, but family is complicated," he replied vaguely. "Sometimes you have to compromise." I did compromise. I said family could visit with notice when I'm here. They went behind my back instead. Patrick sighed. "Just think about the bigger picture. Okay, no one wants this to escalate further." But it had already escalated beyond what I could have imagined. By afternoon, even my grandmother Eleanor, my father's mother, had called to express her concern about the family division I was causing. The fact that she lived in Florida and had visited the cabin exactly twice in 30 years didn't stop her from having strong opinions about its use. The pressure was becoming overwhelming. Was I being unreasonable? Was I misinterpreting my grandfather's intentions? A seed of doubt took root in my mind. To clear my head, I decided to tackle the project of reorganizing my grandfather's workshop attached to the cabin. The familiar smell of sawdust and machine oil was comforting as I began sorting through tools and supplies. In the back of a drawer filled with fishing tackle, I discovered a leather-bound journal I'd never seen before. The first page bore my grandfather's distinctive handwriting, "Thoughts on Legacy, Harold Mercer." My hands trembled slightly as I turned the pages. The journal contained my grandfather's reflections on his life, his values, and what he hoped to pass on. About halfway through, I found an entry dated just 6 months before his death. "Spoke with Patricia about finalizing my will today. She questioned my decision to leave the cabin solely to Brandon, suggesting it might cause family tension. Perhaps it will, but I stand firm. Susan and Richard never appreciated this place. To them, it's just real estate with untapped value. Amanda actively dislikes being here unless she can turn it into a social showcase. Brandon alone understands what makes this cabin special. He sees beyond the modest structure to the soul of the place. He's the only one who will preserve it, as I have. Sometimes the kindest legacy isn't dividing things equally, but entrusting them to those who will truly value them." Tears welled in my eyes as I read his words. My grandfather had been fully aware of the potential family conflict his decision might cause, but he'd made his choice deliberately, with clear reasoning. The journal entry strengthened my resolve and silenced the doubts that had begun to creep in. I spent the rest of the day completing the cabin cleanup and making notes about repairs needed. When my phone rang again, I almost ignored it, but the caller ID showed it was Jennifer, my grandfather's lawyer. I answered immediately. "Brandon, I hope I'm not disturbing you," she began formally. "I received a concerning call from your mother today regarding the cabin inheritance." My stomach tightened. "What kind of call?" "She inquired about whether your grandfather's will could be contested on grounds that he wasn't of sound mind when he made his decision about the cabin." Jennifer's tone was neutral, but I detected an undercurrent of disapproval. I informed her that Harold was absolutely lucid and explicit in his wishes, and that any contest would be both unsuccessful and expensive. The revelation that my parents were considering legal action shocked me deeply. Thank you for letting me know, I managed to say. Brandon Jennifer added her voice, softening slightly. For what it's worth, your grandfather was very clear about his wishes. He knew exactly what he was doing when he left you the cabin. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. After we hung up, I sat on the porch steps, watching the sunset reflect off the lake. The beauty of the scene contrasted sharply with the ugliness of the family situation. Tomorrow was Sunday, our traditional family dinner day. I decided it was time for a direct confrontation rather than this escalating Cold War of texts and phone calls. With new determination, I texted my parents, "I'll be at dinner tomorrow. We need to talk about this situation face to face." My mother replied almost instantly, "Good. We have a proposed solution that will work for everyone." I doubted that very much, but I was prepared to listen, and more importantly, to make my position unmistakably clear. Sunday evening arrived with a sense of foreboding. I drove to my parents' suburban home, the familiar route doing nothing to calm my nerves. For the first time, I felt like an outsider approaching family territory, rather than returning to a place of comfort. My mother answered the door with an overly bright smile. "Brandon, come in. Dinner's almost ready." The forced normality was jarring. In the living room, Amanda sat scrolling through her phone, not looking up as I entered. Tyler was beside her, which surprised me. Sunday dinners were typically immediate family only. His presence felt like another boundary being deliberately crossed. My father emerged from his study, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Good to see you, son. Beer." I declined the beer but followed him into the dining room. The table was set with the good china. My mother signaled that this was an important occasion. My grandmother Eleanor was there too, despite living an hour away, confirming my suspicion that this dinner had been orchestrated specifically for the cabin discussion. We settled around the table, the tension palpable beneath the veneer of normalcy. My mother served pot roast mashed potatoes and green beans, comfort food presumably chosen to soften the confrontation to come. Small talk dominated the first 15 minutes, work updates, weather comments, my grandmother's arthritis flare-up. Finally, as my mother served apple pie for dessert, my father cleared his throat. "So Brandon, about the cabin situation. We think we've come up with a fair solution." Here it was. I set down my fork and waited. "We're proposing a family ownership agreement," he continued, pulling a document from his pocket. "We've drafted it already. Essentially, while you would maintain primary ownership, each family member would have guaranteed access rights for a certain number of weeks per year. Amanda naturally would have the most time after you, since she's shown the most interest in using the property regularly." I almost laughed at the absurdity of that last statement, but managed to keep my expression neutral. "May I see this agreement?" He slid the paper across the table. The document was surprisingly formal typed and even notarized. It outlined a schedule giving Amanda access to the cabin for 12 weekends per year, of her choosing my parents for 4 weeks annually, and even included provisions for my grandmother, aunt, and uncle to use it for 1 week each. There was a clause stating I couldn't sell the property without family approval, and another requiring me to share any rental income should I ever rent it out. "This is completely unacceptable," I said, calmly setting the paper down. "You haven't even read it properly," my mother protested. "I've read enough." I reached into my own pocket and pulled out 2 items: a copy of my grandfather's will and the letter from Jennifer confirming my full legal ownership. This cabin was left to me. Not to us as a family. To me specifically. "Legal technicalities don't change family obligations," my father argued. "Let me be clear about something," I continued, pulling out my phone. "This isn't just about legal ownership. It's about respect and trust." I opened my photo gallery and slid the phone toward the center of the table. Here's what I found when I arrived at the cabin Thursday night. The photos showed the mess Amanda and her friends had left, the stained quilt, the broken fishing rod, the scratched floors, empty bottles everywhere. And here I said, swiping to the next set of images are the irreplaceable items that are now missing or damaged. My grandmother gasped at the photo of the stained family quilt. "That was your great-grandmother's work." Amanda finally looked up from her phone. "It's just stuff," she said dismissively, echoing our mother's words. "Things can be replaced." "Some things can't," I replied. "Like Grandpa's custom fishing rod that he made by hand. Or his World War II compass that's now missing." "We didn't take anything," Tyler interjected with a laugh. It was just a party, man. Chill out. His casual attitude infuriated me, but I kept my voice level. Would Grandpa have wanted his heirlooms treated this way? Would he have wanted strangers rummaging through his belongings while throwing a party? Amanda rolled her eyes. Here we go again with, what Grandpa would have wanted. You always act like you were the only one who knew him. I spent time with him, I replied simply. I listened to him. I respected what mattered to him. You were always his favorite, Amanda snapped, her composure cracking. The golden grandson who could do no wrong. The rest of us never stood a chance. This isn't about favoritism, I said. It's about honoring his wishes and respecting his legacy. My father jumped in. Your grandfather's decision about the cabin was unfair, Brandon. We're just trying to correct that. By going behind my back. By giving Amanda a key without telling me. By letting her bring strangers who damaged and possibly stole family heirlooms. My mother had the grace to look slightly ashamed, but quickly recovered. We thought you were being selfish. The cabin should be for everyone. If that's what Grandpa wanted, that's what he would have specified in his will, I countered. He was very clear about his intentions. You don't know that, my father insisted. I hesitated, then decided to share what I'd found. Actually, I do. I pulled out my grandfather's journal and read aloud the entry about his decision to leave me the cabin. The room fell silent as my grandfather's words filled the space. When I finished reading, my grandmother was the first to speak. Harold always knew his own mind, she said quietly. If that's what he wanted, there should be no more argument. Amanda's face had flushed red. So he didn't think the rest of us were good enough for his precious cabin. Nice to know what he really thought of me. That's not what he said, I replied. He said you want different things from the cabin than what it is. He wanted it preserved as a simple retreat, not turned into a party house or investment property. Whatever, Amanda stood up abruptly. I don't need his stupid cabin anyway. Come on, Tyler. As they headed for the door, my father called after her. Amanda, wait. We haven't resolved anything. But she was gone, the front door, slamming behind her. My mother turned to me, tears in her eyes. Now look what you've done. You've upset your sister. The unfairness of that statement, blaming me for Amanda's reaction to a situation my parents had created, clarified everything for me. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a simple disagreement about property use. This was a fundamental difference in values and respect for boundaries. I think I need some space from all of you, I said, standing up. I've been clear about my boundaries. The cabin is mine, left to me by Grandpa. I'm happy to have family visit when invited, but there will be no shared ownership agreement, no unrestricted access, and no more going behind my back. You're choosing property over family? My father said accusingly. No, I replied, my voice steady. I'm choosing respect over manipulation. I'm choosing to honor Grandpa's wishes over rewriting them to suit your preferences. And I'm choosing healthy boundaries over letting people walk all over me. I thanked my grandmother for coming, nodded to my parents, and walked out. The evening air felt clean and fresh after the stifling atmosphere inside. As I drove away, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. The confrontation had been painful, but necessary. Whatever happened next, I had stood my ground and spoken my truth. The week following the family dinner was eerily quiet. No texts from Amanda, no calls from my parents. The silence was both a relief and unsettling, like the calm before a storm or the aftermath of a disaster. I took the week off work to focus on properly repairing and cleaning the cabin. The physical labor was therapeutic, allowing me to channel my emotions into something productive. I sanded and refinished the scratched floors, carefully cleaned the stained quilt using techniques I researched online, specifically for antique fabrics, and reorganized the cabin's contents to take inventory of what might still be missing. As I worked, I discovered more evidence that Amanda's use of the cabin hadn't been a one-time occurrence. In the back of a kitchen drawer, I found mail addressed to her. Delivery confirmations for online orders dated over the past 2 months. In the loft bedroom closet, I discovered a small stash of her clothing and some of Tyler's things too. They had been treating the place as their personal weekend getaway for some time, right under my nose. The betrayal cut deeper with each new discovery. While clearing fallen branches near the property line, I spotted my elderly neighbor Frank making his way over from his cabin about a quarter-mile down the shoreline. "Brandon, good to see you, son," he called, leaning on his walking stick. "Wasn't sure when you'd be back." "Hi, Frank," I greeted him. "Just doing some cleanup and repairs." Frank had been my grandfather's friend for decades, their cabins the only two for nearly a mile in either direction. He looked at the branches I'd gathered and nodded approvingly. "Your sister mentioned you'd been neglecting the place. Glad to see that's not the case." My head snapped up. "My sister? You've seen Amanda here?" Frank looked confused. "Sure, she's been coming up most weekends for the past couple months. Always with that boyfriend and usually other folks too. Quite the social butterfly, your sister." "Did she tell you she had permission to use the cabin?" I asked carefully. "Well, she said you were too busy with work to maintain the place properly, so the family was taking turns checking on it." Frank studied my expression. "I take it that's not the case." "Not exactly," I admitted. "Grandpa left the cabin to me, not the family. Amanda wasn't supposed to be using it without my knowledge." Frank's bushy eyebrows rose. "Well, that explains some things. Never could figure why they were bringing in cleaning crews on Sundays." Cleaning crews. Professional types. Van with a company logo. Ready Rentals or something similar. Thought it was odd for a family cabin, but figured maybe you had arranged it. A cold sensation settled in my stomach. "Frank, how often would you say Amanda was here?" "Pretty regular. Friday afternoon to Sunday evening, almost every weekend since about a month after Harold passed. Sometimes midweek, too." I thanked Frank for the information and headed inside to my laptop. A quick search for Ready Rentals near Lake Meridian yielded nothing but Lake Ready Rentals popped up, a cleaning service specializing in turnover cleaning for vacation rentals. With growing suspicion, I searched for cabin rentals in the area on various vacation rental platforms. On the third site, I found it, charming lakefront cabin with private dock. The photos were unmistakably of my grandfather's cabin, though the listing was titled under "Hosted by Mandy" instead of Amanda. The calendar showed it booked solid for weekends going back 2 months at a rate of $300 per night with a 2-night minimum. A quick calculation suggested Amanda had made over $7,000 renting out my cabin without my knowledge or permission. I took screenshots of everything: the listing, the calendar, the payment terms, that directed funds to an account I didn't recognize. My hands were shaking with anger by the time I finished documenting the evidence. Without hesitation, I called Jennifer, my grandfather's lawyer, who had handled the inheritance. "This is definitely problematic," she said, after I explained the situation. "Not only is she trespassing on your property, but she's also conducting a commercial enterprise without your consent, and presumably without proper licenses, insurance, or tax reporting." "What are my options?" I asked. "Legally, you're in a very strong position," Jennifer replied. "You could pursue damages for trespassing, unauthorized use, and lost rental income. Given the family relationship, however, you might want to consider whether legal action is your best first step." She was right. As furious as I was suing, my sister would create a permanent rift in the family. The question was whether that rift didn't already exist. "Would a formal cease and desist letter be appropriate?" I asked. "That would be a reasonable first step," Jennifer agreed. "I can draft one that outlines the legal implications without immediately escalating to a lawsuit. It would establish that you're serious and create documentation of your objection to her activities." "And what about the rental income she's collected?" Jennifer paused. "That's trickier. You're entitled to it, but recovering it might require civil action. Again, you need to consider what your ultimate goal is here." After our call, I sat on the dock, watching the sunset, turning the situation over in my mind. My sister had not only violated my trust and boundaries, but had been profiting from it significantly. My parents had almost certainly known about, or at least suspected, the rental activity, which explained their push for the family ownership agreement. They wanted to legitimize what Amanda was already doing illegally. Rather than immediately pursuing legal action, I decided on a strategic approach. I contacted the vacation rental platform and reported the unauthorized listing, providing proof of my ownership. Within 24 hours, Amanda's listing was removed from the site with a notification that it violated platform policies. Next, I compiled all the evidence. Photos of damaged screenshots of the rental listing, neighbor testimony proof of cleaning services, and documentation of personal items found at the cabin into a comprehensive email. I added Jennifer's formal legal assessment of the situation and a clear statement of boundaries going forward. I sent the email not just to Amanda and my parents, but to my entire extended family who had been part of the pressure campaign against me. The message was clear. I knew exactly what had been happening. I had legal recourse if needed, but I was giving them one opportunity to make things right before taking further action. The email concluded, I value family, but family relationships must be built on mutual respect and honesty. What has happened here shows neither. I am open to rebuilding trust, but that process begins with acknowledgement of wrongdoing and making appropriate amends. After sending it, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Whatever happened next was up to them. I had stood firm in my boundaries and brought the hidden activities into the light. Now it was time to focus on restoring the cabin to what my grandfather had intended it to be, a place of peace, simplicity, and respect for nature. 2 weeks passed with no response to my email. The silence was deafening, but somehow not surprising. I continued my work on the cabin, finding solace in the physical labor and the quiet beauty of the lake. The security system was installed, new locks secured all entries, and I'd made significant progress repairing the damage. I was staining the repaired section of porch railing when I heard tires on the gravel driveway. An old blue pickup truck pulled up. My grandfather's brother, Uncle Robert. At 82, he rarely drove distances anymore, making his appearance all the more unexpected. "Hope I'm not intruding," he called, as he carefully made his way up the path. "Thought I'd see how Harold's place is holding up." "You're always welcome, Uncle Robert," I said, setting aside my brush and helping him up the porch steps. Coffee. Over mugs of strong black coffee on the porch, Robert studied the improvements I'd made. Harold would approve. He nodded approvingly. "You've got his eye for detail." "Thanks," I replied. "I'm trying to preserve what made this place special to him." Robert took a long sip of coffee. "Heard there's been some family dispute about the cabin. Your grandmother called me concerned." I sighed. "It's been difficult. Grandpa left the cabin to me, but my parents and sister felt entitled to use it however they wanted. It got complicated." With the wisdom of his years, Robert listened patiently as I explained the situation. Amanda's unauthorized use, the rental scheme, the family pressure, and the current silence. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Not surprised Harold left you the place. He talked about it often in his last years." "He did." "Oh yes. Said you were the only one who really understood what made this cabin worthwhile. Not the property value or the prestige of having a lake house, but the simplicity of it, the connection to nature." Uncle Robert reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded set of papers. "Found these when I was going through some of Harold's things he'd stored at my place. Thought you might want them." The papers contained detailed sketches for cabin improvements. An expanded deck with built-in seating, solar panel placement options, a rainwater collection system, and a small woodworking shop addition. Notes in my grandfather's handwriting filled the margins. "Discuss with Brandon summer project with Brandon, for Brandon to complete after I'm gone." "He had plans for you too," Robert said gently. "Knew he was running out of time, but wanted to leave you with projects you could carry forward." Tears welled in my eyes as I studied the drawings. These weren't just renovation plans. They were a legacy of shared values and vision. My grandfather had been planning for my stewardship of the cabin long before his passing. "Thank you for bringing these," I said, my voice thick with emotion. Robert patted my shoulder. "Family conflicts have a way of working themselves out given time and space. Stand firm in what you know is right, but keep your heart open to reconciliation when it's genuine." His visit strengthened my resolve to honor my grandfather's intentions while remaining open to healing the family rifts if possible. After he left, I began studying the improvement plans, finding joy in connecting with my grandfather's vision. 3 days later, I was surprised by another unexpected visitor. Amanda's car pulled into the driveway late in the afternoon. She was alone. No Tyler, no friends. A rarity in itself. I met her on the porch, keeping my expression neutral. Amanda. She looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from foot to foot. Can we talk? We sat at the small table on the porch, the lake stretching out before us. Amanda was uncharacteristically quiet, staring at her hands. I'm sorry, she finally said, the words coming out in a rush. I was wrong. About everything. I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. The rental thing was Tyler's idea initially, she admitted. We were having money problems. His startup isn't doing well, and my teaching salary barely covers our apartment. When Grandpa left you the cabin, Tyler suggested we could use it on weekends. He wasn't booking music gigs. She took a deep breath. It started as just us using it occasionally. Then Tyler pointed out we could make good money renting it out. Mom and Dad knew we were using it, but not about the rental business. That was just me and Tyler. Why didn't you just ask me for help if you were struggling financially? I asked. Amanda's eyes welled with tears. Pride, I guess? And honestly, I was jealous. You've always had everything together. Your business is successful, you were. Grandpa's favorite, you got the cabin. It felt good to take something back. I would have helped you, I said quietly. Without the lying and betrayal. I know that now. She wiped her eyes. After your email, Tyler and I had a huge fight. He thought we should lawyer up and fight for partial ownership. I realized then that he never cared about the cabin's meaning to our family. He just saw dollar signs. And your boyfriend now? Ex-boyfriend, she corrected. We broke up. That's part of why I'm here. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my choices and priorities. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is all the money I made from renting the cabin. It's rightfully yours. And this, she added, placing a small box beside it, is Grandpa's compass. Tyler had taken it. I got it back. The gesture of returning these items touched me more than I expected. Thank you. Mom and Dad were wrong too, she continued. They pressured me to claim family rights to the cabin, said you were being selfish, and that Grandpa would have wanted everyone to use it. But after reading the journal entry you shared, I realized they were rewriting history to fit what they wanted. We talked for nearly 2 hours. As the sun began to set over the lake, Amanda shared her memories of our grandfather. Different from mine, but valuable in their own way. I showed her his renovation plans, and to my surprise, she showed genuine interest. I never gave this place a fair chance, she admitted. Always complained about the lack of amenities, instead of appreciating what was here. Before she left, we drafted a simple agreement. Amanda could use the cabin occasionally, with explicit permission, provided she respected the property and its contents. No more unauthorized access, no more surprise visitors, and definitely no rental business. I'd like to help with some of the renovations, she offered tentatively. Maybe learn a bit about why Grandpa loved this place so much. It was a small olive branch, but a meaningful one. As her car disappeared down the driveway, I felt the first real hope that healing was possible. A week later, my parents finally reached out. Their initial message was defensive, but after I maintained my boundaries while keeping communication open, they gradually moved toward genuine apology. It took several difficult conversations, but eventually they acknowledged their role in enabling and encouraging the boundary violations. We thought we were creating family harmony by giving Amanda access, my mother admitted during a visit to the cabin. Instead, we undermined your ownership and betrayed your trust. I'm sorry, Brandon. My father, always more stubborn, took longer to come around. But seeing the care I'd put into preserving and improving the cabin seemed to shift something in him. Your grandfather knew what he was doing, he finally acknowledged. This place is in good hands with you. 3 months after the initial confrontation, I hosted a family dinner at the restored cabin. The new deck, built following my grandfather's plans, provided the perfect setting. Amanda helped prepare the meal, showing a newfound respect for the cabin and its significance. My parents arrived with a framed copy of the original cabin blueprint my grandfather had drawn decades ago, a peace offering, an acknowledgement of my rightful ownership. On the wall inside, I'd framed a simple statement of cabin rules, beginning with all visits by arrangement, and ending with respect the legacy this cabin represents. No one objected. After dinner, as we sat watching the sunset, my grandmother remarked, Harold would be pleased to see us all here together, respecting his wishes and each other. Later, when everyone had gone, I sat alone, on the dock, feet dangling in the cool water. The cabin lights glowed warmly behind me, and stars began appearing in the darkening sky. I could almost feel my grandfather sitting beside me, fishing rod in hand, sharing comfortable silence. The journey to this point had been painful, but necessary. By standing firm and protecting what was valuable to me, I'd actually strengthened relationships that now had clearer boundaries and greater mutual respect. As the lake water lapped gently against the dock pilings, I reflected that sometimes the most important inheritance isn't the property itself, but the values it represents. Integrity, respect, appreciation for simple pleasures, and the courage to protect what matters. What about you? Have you ever had to stand your ground with family over something important to you? How did you balance protecting your boundaries while preserving relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might be facing similar challenges with family boundaries. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the strongest family bonds are formed when we have the courage to establish healthy boundaries.